Hey, welcome back to the Overflow Podcast. I'm Jeff DeBoer with Austin Gibson. Pastor Justin is back with us off vacation.
Hey, guys. Yeah, this is good.
Welcome back. I'm telling you, hey, the heat wave here continues. This may be the last day of oppressive 90-plus degree heat, mid-upper 90-degree heat index, and I, for one, am going to be glad to stand outside today and wave goodbye to this.
I didn't know what was going on when I was at, we went to the beach, Myrtle, there, Dirty Myrtle, what they call it. And we went there for our vacation. We had a good time. And but I kept getting all these notifications, like on my email from Appalachian Power that, some issues were going on with people's heat, power going off. So it's been super hot. And it was not, I'm sure it was probably the same temperature there, but, you have that breeze constantly. And but it was a good time. We didn't have a lot of rain. We had a little bit, but not too much. And I always say for any of our families that go to the beach or vacation like that, it's usually not a vacation for the husband because I saw multitudes of children and moms carrying their little bags with towels, and then you look behind,
husband's got the trailer
and he's got the 14 chairs, the umbrella, and he's pulling it in a little old cart, and the wife and the kids are already at the beach and he's struggling to get it in the sand. And there was a guy actually walked across the little walkway from where our place we stayed at. I guess he was staying where we were at, but we wasn't really right on the beach, but we had to walk across the street to get to the beach. We had to walk across this little, walkway. And I opened the gate for him and I said, "It's not a vacation for us, is it?" He just laughed, But no, it was good. I made my kids, they're at the age now, I said, I put the chairs in the back of the truck and I said, "On your way over here, stop by and get one so you can have one at the beach." That's the way we did it. So it wasn't too bad.
But I longed for those days because some of the best memories. The beach is the getaway place for my wife and I. And we've just, we're Hilton Head Island folks. That's where we've gone for the past several years. And we enjoy it there. It's a little bit more laid back, not as commercial. And but those days when you pack up in the morning early to take everything with you to the beach so that you don't have to make trips back to the room. But what a load that can be. And I tell you what, there's probably nothing that's more miserable than to be sunbaked. You're working up probably your fifth sweat of the day, and you're trying to get everything loaded back up with all of that sand grinding in your chairs and in the gears of your wheels of whatever cart you're using.
Yeah, and other places on your body too.
And you're pulling it, from where your chairs and everything had resided for most of the day. And then you get to the top of the beach where the sand is powdery and about 12 inches deep, and you're pulling through that, and you're thinking to yourself, am I ever going to get back to the room? Yeah. But then you go to bed that night and you're thinking, man, I can't wait to get back up and get at it.
But, you really didn't really realize, and we kind of sat there because we was watching some families. Of course, all mine are, they're able to carry their own stuff now, and actually they carry most of it this time. But how much work it is for parents with little kids, especially because you got to put the sunscreen on them, and, they don't want to do it. They don't realize that they're getting ready to get, scorched, but some of us in my family are very fair skinned. I said when God made us, he used a fresh can of white paint on us, I like but that. Two of us in our family. Anyway, the others are pretty good. He used a little off white on them, but anyway. But no, I mean, we had a good time. We were at the place where we were out on the beach. I thought this was pretty neat because I guess I hadn't been to Myrtle probably. It's been a long, long time. I remember, even one of the guys that come to our North Campus here, we went, this is back when we were teenagers. So it's been, 30 years ago, and we rode these banana boats. And so the place where we were at on the beach, I remember when we rode on them, I mean, it was rough. I mean, to hold on, it was like, riding a wild bull. I mean, you're holding on for dear life, because you're afraid if you fall off, there's going to be like sharks or a whale out there that's going to eat you. But I mean, we sat right on the beach, and it was where the rentals of the banana boat where they took you out on the parasail, where they the jet ski, even some sailboats, and so we see them going out constantly. I mean, we were sitting right beside
the
kind of where they had it blocked off. But that first day when I went down there, I was kind of down there by myself, and this guy was taking a load out to the parasail. It's a different boat than the banana boat. If our listeners are familiar with that, it's kind of a one. It's bigger, but it's kind of one seat in the middle. And it was a bunch of girls. I don't know. It's probably, 17 to 19 years old. And they were going out early in the morning, about 9 o'clock. And this guy was on the jet ski and he hits that first wave. And I guess he just gunned it. And I mean, it just timed perfectly to where that raft, went up in the air. And the girl in the front, I mean, her feet was above her head and she come down. I mean, I thought it knocked her out, but he took it a little more easy the next few days, because that's all he did. That's all he did from 9 until the time we left the beach. That he was taking a load out, coming back in on the jet ski, taking a load out, coming back in. He would take a load out to parasail, then he'd come back and get the banana boat and take. I mean, I couldn't believe how many people were doing this, but it was just constant. I mean, going out, going in, coming out.
I hope he gets paid by the load and not by the hour on that.
But it was good. But and then I heard we hit 100 followers on our podcast.
Yeah. Congratulations to us, right?
Yeah, I tell you what,
have we made it?
We did it.
Have we arrived? Is that
so? Thank you to all of our listeners that have followed us, and that's just on Spotify. We are on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon podcast, and so it helps us if you will follow us, share the podcast to others, comment on the podcast, give us some comments, something maybe you'd like to hear about. And rate us. Give us a 5-star. That would help us. Okay. But there's a lot of things been going on.
What is the old saying that you hear every night before barter starts its play? If you like us, tell somebody about us. If you don't, just keep those remarks to yourself.
Yeah. So
that's usually what I use at work with my customers whenever I do a phone sale. I'll say you might get a review on me. I was like, if you didn't like what I did, I said, just go ahead and throw it in the junk mail.
Yeah. So, we appreciate everybody that listens, and we get a lot of comments. And really this podcast, the reason we started it, we wanted to another way through the week to where we could kind of make a connection with people about, the message that was on Sunday, kind of some, give it more of a little bit deeper perspective as we just kind of talk about, almost like kind of a Bible study, really where we just kind of have some dialogue and just really kind of an overflow from that. And and really overflow from the week. And, a lot has changed in our world, here since Saturday night. I don't think it's something we can just overlook, but the assassination attempt on, Donald Trump, it's unprecedented in my lifetime, I guess. I guess the last one was probably on Ronald Reagan.
It would have been, goodness gracious. See, being the senior member of this group.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah, I tell you. But I can remember vaguely when John F. Kennedy was killed.
Okay.
I remember my mother crying over that, and I wasn't quite sure at my age why that was happening, and wasn't old enough to truly understand what it meant to have a president assassinated. But I do remember that. And, that being what it was, that was and I remember the news coverage, because I grew up with Walter Cronkite, CBS News. He was kind of that journalist that carried such credibility. And I just remember, the moon launches, the race to space, all of those things. And those were things that I grew up with, but I do remember that with John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, you talk about credibility, we don't have a lot of that anymore in the media. There's some, but it's very few and far between, really.
It is.
We're not trying to be political here, and I don't really like talking about politics because it's so divisive with people. But the truth is, if you're a Christian, you cannot look at what happened. You have to be burdened and sad about what's happening in our country. You can't, whether you like the guy or not. I know some people cannot stand Donald Trump.
He's a polarizing figure. He certainly is.
I know a lot of that probably has come from the media that keeps, feeding this negative toward him and twist things that he says and things like that. And he says some stupid stuff. I mean, I'll say that. And his personality kind of rubs people the wrong way at times. But again, he is an American. He is a human being. And, he is a father. He's a grandfather. He's a husband. Nobody, wants anyone like that. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. We cannot be affirming that, or, like some people are cheering that there was an attempt on his life. Some people are upset that it didn't work. I mean, are you kidding me? That we're living in some very difficult times, but it's also sad to see how far we've come that, even though we have differences, we're still Americans.
Absolutely. Yes. And, we talk about credibility here. That just plays right into the morning message this past Sunday about credibility in Christianity.
Yeah.
What an important element that is for us. And I've been thinking about that. And we talked just a little bit before the podcast started this morning about Simon the sorcerer.
Yeah.
And, tradition has varying opinions about how this story with him continues, because once the passage of Scripture ends with him this past Sunday morning, that's the last we hear about him in the Bible.
That's correct.
Wouldn't it be interesting to find out what truly happened with him? Was his testimony favorable? The regret over the request that he made about, hey, I'd like to be able to purchase what you guys have.
Yeah.
This is impressive. It's amazing. And from a man who, under a very suspicious power, was able to keep people amazed for quite some time. People basically looked at Simon as if he was, as he would possess the power of God.
Mm-hmm.
But, going forward, one would certainly hope that there was a regret about his method and manner of approach of the apostles about, hey, I'd like, I have money here. I'd like to be able to buy what you all have. And, Peter's rebuke is about as strict as it could be. I certainly hope things worked out well for him and that there was some reputable, honorable, respectful testimony of him and a renewing of a relationship with God from that point forward. Some of the early Christian church fathers don't treat him very kindly, mm-hmm. and basically said, he continued to go back to his sorcery practices. Nothing really changed with him, even a type of an antichrist, some strong remarks. So only the Lord knows.
Right.
But this legitimacy, authenticity, credibility that ought to be the rule of the life of the Christian is certainly something that needs to be, we need to esteem that very highly.
Well, and you brought up the term Antichrist, and, for those listening, maybe you didn't get to listen to the message this past Sunday, we talked about counterfeit Christianity, the imitation, that you can look the part, you can even know the right words. I mean, when you actually look at what Simon did, because Philip was preaching the gospel, people were believing and being baptized, men and women, and many of them. And when he saw that, it says he believed and he was baptized and he started following Philip. But then when it gets to the point where Peter and John, lay hands on these Samaritans and they receive the Holy Spirit, it shows his true heart that he wasn't following Jesus for Jesus. He was following Jesus for the things that he could do for him. And the term Antichrist is kind of that counterfeit term. I mean, because I was, when you said that, it took me to another passage of Scripture, and I'll probably read a couple different ones today, but in 1 John chapter number 2 and verse number 18, it's talking about in the last days, which that's where we are. And so this is very applicable to us. It says, dear children, the last hour is here. You have heard that the Antichrist is coming. It's talking about, the Antichrist empowered by Satan. Mm-hmm. But it says already many such Antichrist, lowercase, have appeared. Mm. And so they're counterfeits. He says, from this we know that the last hour has come. Notice, these people left our churches, but they never really belong with us. Otherwise, they would have stayed with us. When they left, it proved that they did not belong with us. Mm. And so that's what we see in that passage we talked about on Sunday. Is at the beginning he did follow, he did believe, in the head, but the verse we read Sunday was, I think it's verse 21 of Acts 8, that Peter said, your heart is not right with you. And that's the key. It's not a head relationship. It's a heart relationship with God. And in our day, we have to be very careful because, if you don't, the way the difference between the counterfeit and the real thing is you got to know the real thing. I mean, I worked when we first got married, and I was trying to figure out what, I was doing. We just graduated from Bible college. We was kind of working at a church, here in the area, but we worked, at AmSouth. You remember AmSouth Bank? Well, we both worked there, and you work in a bank and you're dealing with money. They put you in a class where you you can recognize counterfeit money.
I know where this story is going, and it's a great point. So keep it up. This is good.
But I mean, you have to, and the way you do it is you got to look, because they'll show you a counterfeit and a real, and some of them are not good quality, and you can tell. But some of them are so close that if you don't know what the real thing is, you can't tell them apart. And, we had a guy that I used as an illustration, Frank Barossa, who made over $250 million in America making $20 bill counterfeits. And they shortened his jail sentence and suspended it so that he could help them find these $20 bills because they were so close to the original. And so we have people like that today in the church. I mean, that's what the book Acts is talking about. We talked about a couple weeks ago about being the real thing. And then now again, here we have this, example. And even this coming Sunday, we're going to see an example of a different, like Philip, is an actual real follower of Jesus. And we're going to see why he is that and why he was amazingly used by God versus, the counterfeit, so it's something that we really got to guard against, because even myself as a true believer and those that are listening, we have tendencies at times to be counterfeit.
Right.
And we've got to guard against those things that we talked about. We talked about how that, he tried to come to God on his own terms. He didn't want to come to God on his terms. He wanted to come to God on, and I believe probably out of all the points I talked about, that one is the most prevalent in our society today, because people love the grace parts of the Bible, but they don't like the truth parts of the Bible.
Yes.
I mean, and so they want to come to God on their terms. They want God a part of their life, but they don't want God to rule their life. They just want him to kind of be there to bless them. And unfortunately, that is the attitude and characteristic of a counterfeit, because I was reading another passage, and then I'll let you guys talk. But that's what happens when you've been gone a while. You like to talk a lot. But it says this, when Paul was trying to vindicate his ministry to the Corinthian church, he talks about these super apostles is what he called them. And then he says this, these people are false apostles. They are deceitful workers, notice, who disguise themselves as apostles of Christ. So they look just like an apostle of Christ. But I'm not surprised. Even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So it is no wonder that his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness.
A few years ago, we were doing a study out of the book of Revelation, and we were covering the 7 letters to the 7 churches. I'm trying to remember which church we were referring to at this particular time, but one of the phrases that I ran across in a commentary described certain people who come into the church as entering the church through the side door. Mm-hmm. They talk about people who come in through the front door of the church, and those are the ones that are part of the family. Those are the ones that people know. We've walked together with them. You come in through the front door because you can. That's that place. People who are coming for maybe the very first time may not feel as comfortable and confident to come in through the front door. They come in through the back door because that's where a lot of folks come to reside. Some people will They'll worm their way into the back. They'll sit down. They'll kind of test things. They don't quite feel a bit part of the family yet. But you've got these folks, and the way it was described, I thought was very apt, because it said, then you've got these people who come in through the side door. They look like they belong, but they're there with a hook. They're there with an agenda. They're there to get a following. And I think, and I keep, going back to that, about folks who enter churches and they talk the talk, they look the part, but they're there with an agenda. And you just get a sense that, oh gosh, this seems to shine like a diamond, but it may just be glass. Yeah. And you just have to be kind of careful with that. The counterfeit, the thing, and here's the thing too about counterfeit Christianity. And you made this statement. You talked about our relationship with Christ being like a transaction. And I made note of that. You remember that, Austin?
I do. I also have right here, I made a note of it as well. And it's like making that transaction with God. If I, do this for God, he'll do this for me. And I wrote that down. And then you also said acting as Jesus is in our debt instead of us into his debt.
That was such a great word, because we often treat Jesus and God as if they need us. How fortunate are you that I'm in your family? Hey, aren't you glad you've got me in the ranks? We treat our relationship like that with them, and I'm just telling you, it's folks can carry themselves in such a way, and then we get in a situation of that. God, if I scratch your back here and do a little something for you, I bet you'll do a little something for me in return.
Yeah, because they think that they have this huge following, and it's like, I got all these people, I could help you so much, but you got to help me.
Oh, goodness. And in this particular day and age, with the influence of social media, that's the way so many people operate right now.
Exactly.
We work off the click and the like, and we're addicted to that. We post, and then we come back later hoping, to see likes and comments and things like that. We get offended if people take issue with what we've posted there. And, but Christianity can be very superficial and artificial as to how people approach God and approach the church. And we just have to be very mindful. Going back to the banking thing, I think I had heard it like this once, that when you're training cashiers, regarding whether what the money they're holding is real or fake, it's not that they take them through counterfeiting methods and educate them on counterfeiting practice. They study the authentic so that they can they're more prepared and better spot the counterfeit when it happens. We had a counterfeit bill that was passed a few years ago during upward basketball season. And I remember when one of our treasurers went to the credit union and turned in our proceeds for that particular weekend. And he came in and he said, "Hey, when you got a minute, I need to meet with you." And at that time, I was serving as the lead pastor there. So I went into the office. It was our practice to do that on Monday mornings after they counted and everything. But he said, "Had something happen this morning that never happened before." He said, we had a bill that didn't pass specs through the bill counter. And he said it was a $10 bill. Now, I'm thinking, if you're going to counterfeit money, but smaller denominations, people think probably can pass a little easier. It was a 10, and of course they don't let you keep it. They put it out of circulation quickly, so it's not like he could bring it back and say, "Hey, take a look at this." But he said when they inspected it, it was almost like it was made out of fabric and not paper. It was a little bit too large. I think it wasn't the proper size. The ink was poor, but nevertheless, it was a counterfeit. Yeah. And that one was easy to spot. But it's not always like that with people in the church, is it?
No, and what you said, you said something about the side door. Well, Jesus dealt with that in John 10. He said, "I tell you the truth, anyone who sneaks over the wall of the sheepfold, rather than going through the gate or the door, must surely be a thief and a robber.
Yep.
And that's exactly what Simon the sorcerer was trying to do. He was trying to go a different avenue, a different way to get the power of God. And by doing that, he was going to rob God of the glory that God should only have. Because he was getting that before with his magic and his sorcery. It says, but the one who enters through the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep recognize his voice and come to him. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And so he just, says there's not they won't follow a stranger. They'll run from him because they don't know its voice. But he says, all that came before him were thieves and robbers, but the true sheep did not listen to them. Yes, I am the gate. I am the door. Mm-hmm. Jesus is the gateway. He is the door. And that's the whole point of Simon's problem was he wanted the power, but he didn't want God's presence.
Yeah. Yep.
He wanted the gifts, but he didn't want the giver. He wanted, the good things of God and what God could do for him without wanting just God himself.
Yeah, that's your third point is right there on the sheet you've got with the notes. It said motivated by selfish gain. Your note that you said was, are you trying to make you famous or are you trying to make him famous?
Right.
I like that question. Also, it was you put not what we gain, but what we have to give.
Yes. The phrase that Justin used, and I've heard it before, but it popped more on Sunday morning, was God's economy. God's economy. And when you think about these things, power versus presence, gifts versus giver, fame versus cost, gain versus giving, as you just said, all of those things are established elements within God's economy that need to be considered when you look introspectively into your own life to find out, hey, am I doing these things for the right reason? Question that you ended with on Sunday morning as we're kind of drawing, as the old saying goes, coming around turn 3 and heading home here, is this. You said, why are you here? Mm-hmm. And there was a pause of just a couple of seconds when you asked that question that I thought was very powerful, because everyone needs to have what would be considered an acceptable answer for that. Why are you here today? And that's always worthy of an examination. It really is.
Yeah, what is our motivation? I mean,
right.
That's something that we have to ask, because if we're not careful, even if we are, true believers and followers of Christ, we can get in a rut and a routine to where we're doing it just because we've always done it, and that's not, and doing it to get something from the Lord, but also doing it just because it's a routine. It's both not the right reasons to be following Jesus. It's both counterfeit.
Right. Is that going to pass the specs at the judgment seat of Christ?
Yeah.
No.
And so that's the whole point, is that one day it will reveal the authentic from the counterfeit, because it's going to be put in a fire. And just like wood, hay, and stubble are precious stones, when you put those in the fire, our works, our motives, all those things that we've done not with the right motive are going to burn up and turn to ash and smoke, while the other things that we've done are going to be refined and be more pure. And then that's what we get a reward for. And unfortunately, all of us, myself included, are probably going to have a lot of things that burn up more than what we're probably going to get a reward for.
Absolutely.
Because we've done it for, the wrong reason, wrong motive. And, my whole, talk about the terms here is, I used a story. I've been reading a lot of nonfiction history here lately, and it just come up in this, not really a book I was reading, but just, I like watching these stories. I like reading true stories about different things, especially history, but I've really started to do that over the last couple of weeks. But when Ulysses S. Grant told his friend, Colonel Buckner, what the terms were for the peaceful surrender, he said unconditional and immediate. And that is the term for following Jesus. I mean, it's unconditional. I used an illustration. It's like taking a blank sheet of paper and you sign your name to the bottom, and then you let Jesus fill out the details. That's what unconditional surrender is. You're letting him put everything. You're not saying, okay, I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll initial here. No, it's blank, and you come down to the bottom and you say, okay, I'm signing it right here. I agree. And then God is allowed to write everything else in with his pen on the paper. That is unconditional surrender.
Yeah.
And too many times what we've all done is we've said, well, I'll come to you on these terms.
Yeah.
And it can't happen that way. It has to be coming to God on his terms, his way, his truth. And
it reminds me of something that I read yesterday was a quote. It said, salvation is not the finish line. Salvation is the starting line. That's where you start and you proceed and you go. Just like you said, when you write down that piece of paper, you didn't sign at the very bottom. You signed at the top, and then Jesus writes the rest, and we go from there. So
it's really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what we have to do is we have to guard against, the pull of the world to be counterfeit. I mean, that's really what we've got to, standing for truth is not easy. Preaching truth and standing for your values and convictions, you're going to be criticized, and so the tendency is just to pull back. And I'm not saying we should be rude and crude and all that. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is we should speak the truth in love, because people need to hear the truth. And the truth of the matter is that the church, needs to be the light in the community. One of the things I was reading, and then I'll close with this, was when the first settlers, the pioneers, went to the Ohio Territory, and they were crossing the Ohio River. One of the things that happened when they established the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 was pastors had a big play in that, in the founding of this country and the expansion of this country. They were at the table, giving wisdom and instruction. We don't see that much anymore.
No, we don't.
But the church is the key. Ben Carson, last night I was watching the Republican primary, and Ben Carson, he did a great job speaking. He's a very wise man. He's a strong Christian, but he talked about Alex de Tocqueville and what he said when he came from England over here to see what was the greatness of America. And he said it wasn't in the institutions and the educational buildings, and it wasn't in the businesses. He said it was in the church. And he said, when America is good, America will be great. And he talked about the church. He quoted scripture. That was one of the things I was very impressed with last night, was how much scripture that they were quoting and talking about God. And I know some of it is just politics to try to pull Christians to, their way, because that's what politicians do. But I think a lot of it was genuine, especially from some of these that know and you've read over time. But that is, we are to be that light. We have to be that light that is on the hill, that we're not to hide our light, we're to shine our light. And that's what the world has to see, and we have to do it in a very compassionate way. But people need to know what the truth is, and that's part of being real and being authentic.
Being truthful, being hope-filled, and being consistent will enable the world to see we're authentic and genuine.
Yep, that's it. Hey, we thank you for tuning in this week on, I know it's on Wednesday. I believe it is. It Wednesday today?
Today is Wednesday, yes.
July 17th. So getting back from vacation, you kind of get a little confused. But hey, we appreciate you listening today. Please follow, share, and comment. Rate us on Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Thank you for listening today. God bless you. Hope to see you Sunday at church, 9, 10:30, 11:15. Have a great week.